Okay. My name is Krista, and hopefully Dr. Sanford will be joining us as well. There are a variety of events going on today, so he just needs to finish up a panel, but hopefully he will join us in about 30 minutes. All right, thank you so much for tuning in to the Pre-Medical and Pre-Dental Advising Office's group advising session. I believe this is the third session we've done so far this semester, and this is intended to be an orientation for anyone who is either new to UConn or new to a pre-medical, pre-dental track. So let's get started. I will be taking questions throughout, by the way, and at that point, you're welcome to either type them into the chat box or unmute your mic and ask them out loud. If we do find ourselves getting a little bogged down, I might just put a hold on that and then we'll pick up at the end as well. So here's the agenda for today. I want to begin by talking a little bit about just our office in general, so who we are, what we actually do throughout the year, some other important things to note, just kind of housekeeping items. After that, we will jump into all the different elements that go into holistic admissions review at both medical and dental schools. So the three major components being academics, experiential things such as clinical experience, research, volunteer work, and finally the core competencies. And we'll end by going over some very helpful resources, both from the national organizations as well as just UConn-based items. Okay, so at the bottom here, you'll also find our basic contact information. Our email address is premed_predental@uconn.edu. You can also find us on Instagram. And typically, we are located on the 4th floor of the Rowe building on campus. However, right now, our entire staff is working virtually from home. So first, I always like to orient you in terms of where we fit in the overall scheme of things at UConn. So the Pre-Medical Pre-Dental Advising Office is part of the Office of Pre-Professional Advising, along with the Pre-Law Advising Office. And that's one of the 6 subunits of the overall Enrichment Programs Department. So you can see all 6 of those programs listed here, as well as in the little visual at the bottom. This department is composed of programs that are open to all UConn students of all majors, all campuses, and provides opportunities for you to really enhance your undergraduate experiences. The only one that requires initial invitation to join is for incoming freshmen in the honors program. However, rising sophomores and rising juniors can apply to honors as well. All of the other offices are welcome for anyone to join, make use of resources, make appointments with advisors, or apply into other specific programs within them. And just as an example of one way that you can really enrich your undergraduate experience, this is one of our recent graduates. Her name is Akshaya. She somehow managed to touch basically all the different subunits within enrichment programs during her time at UConn. So she was a STEM scholar in honors. She also presented as a Holster scholar. She did create her own major in the individualized major program in health policy and social medicine, as well as take part in the health research program at the Health Center in Farmington, Connecticut. She also won some very prestigious grants and scholarships, and she's currently studying abroad, not studying abroad, she has a fellowship to study for graduate work in the UK, and she's currently applying to medical school this exact cycle. So just one way, and encourage you to really check out all these different enrichment programs moving forward, just so that you're aware of opportunities. In terms of who we are, so these are some of the names and faces that you will see associated with the Pre-Medical and Pre-Dental Advising Office. Our fairly new director of pre-professional advising is named Erin, and she joined us this past summer. So she's taking the helm and will be a really great force in shaping what pre-professional advising looks like at UConn in the years to come. In terms of pre-medical advising, we have Dr. Keith Sanford, first and foremost. He was the former Associate Dean of Admissions at UConn Med for over 30 years. And so we're very fortunate to have him now in this current role working with undergraduates at the other end of the pipeline. Kalaya Arrington is a PhD student in educational psychology with focuses on creativity and social justice in education. She is currently working with one of our subpopulations of students called Rowe Scholars, and she is also doing some advising for the pre-medical program. On the pre-dent side of things, we have Dr. Thomas Abbott, who you may or may not know from Biology 1107, kind of a rite of passage for many students here. So because that is such a smaller population compared to pre-meds, he is the one and only pre-dental advisor. And so he does really get to know you quite well throughout your time at UConn. If you are a first-year pre-dent student or you're maybe transferred to UConn, you haven't met him yet, I do encourage you to book an appointment with him in the very near future just to get to know him. And I'll explain how to do that in a minute. My name is Krista Rogers. I'm a program coordinator in the Enrichment Programs Department, but I do the biggest chunk of what I do is pre-professional related. I do advising for pre-medical students as well, and I'm the main coordinator of our annual composite letter process. Sue Ruggiero here provides a lot of administrative support to our programs. She is also the main contact person for our post-bac program, which we'll hear about as well. So just to clarify any concerns, because a very common question we get at the beginning is, what do I have to do to become pre-med or pre-dent at UConn? The simple answer is that there is no formal application. There's nothing you need to do to apply. Really, the official, unofficial way of us knowing that you are on a pre-med or pre-dent track is just to join our emailing list. So please, 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 if you have not already done so, email us at premed_predental@uconn.edu. Just say, I would like to be added to the list, and we will get you on that ASAP. We do send out a weekly newsletter as well as just kind of sporadic messages whenever there are important events or opportunities coming up, including external resources, job positions even. Also, all of the application cycle related information and deadlines are distributed via this list, so it's really, really important you get on it. In terms of what our office does, so we spend the bulk of our time throughout the year definitely with advising. And we do offer these group sessions as well as, after this session today, you're welcome to book a one-on-one appointment with an advisor if you have more personalized questions remaining. That is typically mainly focused from the beginning of the academic year through the early spring. Once the spring hits, we turn our focus largely to this thing called a composite letter. So more on that in a second. But I do want to mention the fact as well that our office works with both current students and alumni. So please keep this in mind because it's actually becoming the norm these days for students to take a little extra time before applying to medical or dental school. And as a UConn alumni, you are always, always welcome to reach back out to us, both for general advising and then to kick off this application process. In addition, our office partners with the UConn Graduate School to offer something called a post-bac program. And this is either a 1 or 2 year certificate program, depending on which track you would be in. It is intended for students who either decided a little too late that they want to go the pre-med, pre-dent route, or and they need to play catch-up taking the required prereqs, or for students who need to fill in some gaps, also possibly retake courses, enhance their undergraduate GPA. So this is a cohort of about 15 to 20 students per year. It's a very rigorous program. But if you do want to really focus on your academics during some kind of a gap year, enrichment year before going to medical or dental school, this is one typical kind of program that might be a good fit. So in terms of other resources we offer throughout the year, we do have a series of workshops as well. The biggest one every year is called the Application Orientation, and that is typically held the first week of February. So that outlines everything you will need to know about applying as part of that upcoming application process in the summer. So yes, medical and dental school applications do take place over the summer. Well, we have a timeline a bit later on. It's kind of your one-stop shop for everything. So we talk about what are the application services, what are the different components of the application, what are timelines, even money involved, standardized tests, as well as this composite letter and our internal process for you to go about getting that. After that big workshop, we do hold a series of workshops geared towards more specific elements of the application process, typical ones being about personal statements, how to select schools to apply to, and then also secondary applications. In the late summer, early fall, we typically hold interviewing workshops, and that is in collaboration with the Center for Career Development. So we did actually hold one of those in August, and you can find that recording on our website. In fact, because we work with so many alumni these days, we do try to record everything and anything. So you can always find those recordings on a dedicated page on the website. Okay, so now to get to this thing called a composite letter. Other schools call it a committee letter, but for our purposes, they're the same thing. This is essentially a very comprehensive letter of recommendation that our office staff will prepare for you when you are ready to apply to medical or dental school. These letters are typically required by admissions committees if your undergraduate institution offers them. So in terms of whether it's actually required or not, it's a little bit of a gray area. However, if you don't have one and the schools recognize that UConn does offer one, it could raise some red flags. But the composite letter is really intended to provide a comprehensive 360-degree portrait of you as a candidate. We dive into depth about all aspects of your preparation and experiences, from academics to those experiential things, just about what sets you apart as a candidate, what you feel your personal competencies are. So it also provides us with a great forum to really advocate for you and your personal strengths. Now, one of these composite letters typically comes out to be about 10 to 15 pages total, because we do also include individual letters of recommendation that you will also obtain from other people. So it's just, the composite is one giant package, including our narrative that we write in our office, along with actual screenshots of your individual letters of rec in full. The typical applicant these days averages about 4 to 7 individual letters of rec. And so if you are a freshman, for example, this is not anything you need to worry about right away, but always keep it in the back of your mind that you will want to eventually strike up some really good rapport, genuine relationships with both faculty and other people throughout your undergraduate studies in preparation for obtaining these letters. Just to list them off briefly, again, this is all explained at different points down the road, but a lot of medical dental schools do like to see either 1 or 2 letters from science faculty, meaning specifically biology, chemistry, or physics professors. We do recommend 1 letter from a non-science faculty if possible, because that demonstrates some breadth to your coursework. At least 1 letter from a clinician. So it's typically someone you shadowed or someone who's seen you in a clinical setting. If you're applying to MD programs, for example, ideally an MD. If you're applying to DO programs, there are some DO schools that actually require a letter from a DO. If you are involved in research, then a letter from your research PI. And finally, 1 to 2 character references. So typically people who know you in a supervisory type role, and they can comment on your professionalism, personal attributes, skills, and competencies that will make you a successful medical school student and future healthcare provider. All right, so for an analogy too, you can think of the individual letters of rec more like snapshots of you, because they focus on you from one very specific angle, whether it's academics or clinical research work, whereas the composite letter as a whole is more of a comprehensive portrait. And just for some reference, every cycle we typically submit about 300 of these, typically anywhere from 35 to 50 dental letters, and the rest are a combination of MD/DO letters. Just a couple more housekeeping things, and I will ask for some questions. So in order to make an appointment with someone from our office, if you are pre-med, you can actually do that directly through our website. We have some appointment forms up there, so just look for the appointment forms tab and then fill out the corresponding request form. If you are pre-dent, you can schedule your own appointment with Dr. Abbott at nexus.uconn.edu. And this semester, he is holding pre-dental specific advising hours on Wednesday afternoon, evening. Please note again that all appointments for this semester, at the very least, are going to be virtually held online. When the office does open again, please swing by, grab some of our swag. Normally I bring them to sessions, but we just can't do that today. Okay, so before jumping into the next segment, I would like to answer any questions you might have at this point, just about general housekeeping things, who we are, what we do, any of those workshops I mentioned. So please feel free to chime in the chat and or unmute your mic to speak up. Are letters from engineering faculty considered science? a little bit of a gray area. We would recommend you still get at least one letter from biochem or physics professors, but if it is your major area, look into getting 2 letters from engineering faculty because you will theoretically know them best. The workshops I mentioned, we do have a list on our website. If you go under the current students tab, we don't have any dates set yet for the ones upcoming in the spring. However, that information is always shared via our emailing list and our newsletter whenever we set dates. One or two more, anyone? Well, thank you for your patience and for adapting to this strange format. We would much rather be doing this in person ourselves. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving for the time being. Now, as a segue into talking about holistic admissions, I inserted these slides because I think they clear up some really big misconceptions that pre-health professional students often hold. So let's begin by talking about majors briefly. Because as you're aware at this point, at UConn and really at many schools, there's no such thing as a pre-med or pre-law major. And in fact, the schools would much rather have you majoring in something that you're really, really interested about, as long as you meet the required prereqs along the way and demonstrate strength in the sciences. We will come back to this. If you don't start in your first year, it's too late. That is absolutely not the case. As I mentioned, more and more students, it's actually like 60% now, are even taking a little additional time before applying, which will ultimately give you more time to strengthen your candidacy in all these different areas and finish taking coursework if you need to. Finally, professional school admission is all about GPA and test scores. Not true. Schools use a very holistic admissions process and review. And while GPA and test scores are extremely important as part of the academic metrics, it's just one part of the full package. So to actually define holistic admissions, I'll give you a second. Just read these definitions from the Association of American Medical Colleges and the American Dental Education Association. All right, so just like we've talked about, they're not going to be focusing on just one thing. They're going to be looking at you from many, many different angles to see what strengths you have to contribute and how you can make part of their incoming class really unique and diverse. So today we're going to go into depth about these 3 things I have listed here: the academic metrics, experiential components, and core competencies. We'll begin with the academics. Also, this is just one more way to visualize holistic admissions. So you can see in this graphic, your academic metrics, personal attributes, and experiences all go into crafting a strong, well-rounded, successful applicant. Okay, so another question we often get from freshmen or anyone new to a track is pre-health professional track: what major should I be? You really, really should major in whatever you're most passionate about. And it's fine if you need to take a little time and explore what some of those interests might be. The one thing we don't want you to do is major in something just because you feel pigeonholed into it, because you feel it's expected of you. This is not the case at all. Again, as long as you take your required prereqs and you do demonstrate strength in those science areas, your major can be anything you want it to be. Just as 2 examples, actually, 2 of my favorite stories. So in 2018, our applicant who eventually matriculated to Stanford Med was an English major. I think that's very cool. And last year, the president of the Pre-Dental Society at UConn was a history major. He is currently at UConn Dental. So they were both able to demonstrate great diversity and breadth in their coursework. Very cool, and successfully enrolled in health professional school now. Just for reference, if you were curious, we did do a little data digging recently though, and based on our appointments over the past year or so, here are some statistics in terms of the majority of students on a pre-med or dent track do tend to be in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, but we do see growing numbers as well in the College of Agriculture, Health, and Natural Resources, as well as I've been meeting with a lot of engineering students recently. All those things said, ultimately the most popular majors in terms of numbers do happen to fall in the biology department, the three big ones being straight out biological sciences, MCB, or PNB. These majors overlap very nicely with the required prereqs for medical or dental school, and so it does give you, or it just helps in planning your schedule as well as potentially free up time for pursuing other interests. However, the majors you see listed on this page are just a very small sampling of some of the other majors that our pre-medical, pre-dental students are enrolled in at UConn at the moment. I would draw your attention again to that individualized major, just to put it on your radar. So if you're not aware, this is a really cool program at UConn. You actually can hand design your own major that involves crafting your own plan of study, and the core point being that it's interdisciplinary. So you combine courses from multiple departments and even propose the title for your major. This can be done as a standalone major, or it can be done as a double major in complement to a traditionally offered major. So one of the pockets that this program has seen great popularity in recently is related to health studies. They actually have a health sheet or a health individualized major themed info sheet right on their website. You can check out some of those really cool ideas as well. A lot of social justice and health ideas and majors recently too. Some people are doing some really cool things, combining, for example, the hard STEM courses alongside sociology and anthropology. Okay, now let's take a closer look into the coursework. So first of all, let me begin by introducing these three big words you see at the top there: breadth, depth, and rigor. So these are the three things that admissions committees really focus on when evaluating your coursework in general. In terms of breadth, the committees want to see that you're a well-rounded student, you've taken courses in multiple disciplines. Again, you're not just pigeonholed into one specific area. So you do obtain some breadth just by taking your gen eds in different departments. But a really great way to add breadth to your plan of study is to either add on a double major or minor in something. Or even if you don't have a formal major or minor in those areas, just taking pockets of courses to really explore different areas. In terms of depth, so schools do want to see that you're not just taking all intro-level courses, but you do take plenty of advanced upper-level classes. This could also mean that you are taking sequences of courses that build on each other. So just as an example, maybe you take Gen Psych 1 as an elective, you actually really, really enjoy it, and then you decide you want to add on Gen Psych 2, and that way you're adding a little more depth to your plan of study. In terms of rigor, so committees do like to see that you challenge yourself academically when possible. So maybe given the option between two similar classes, you might elect to take the slightly more rigorous one. So for example, there might be two sequences of courses. One is a regular sequence, one is an enhanced sequence. Maybe you elect to take physics with calculus as opposed to physics with algebra. There are really many, many different ways to demonstrate rigor to your plan of study. Certain plans of study already have a lot of rigor built into them as well. I'm thinking of you, any of you BME majors out there. The School of Engineering usually has you on a very rigorous schedule, usually capped out at credits. So you already have some built into that plan of study. Someone said preach. I just spoke actually with Lisa Ephraim, the BME advisor, the other day, make sure we're on the same page about recent requirements and things like that. So always glad to collaborate. Okay, I think I'm going to try pulling this page up on our website just to go over the requirements specifically. It'll be a little bit bigger on the website. So hang tight, and then I will take questions after that. Okay. And excuse my insane number of tabs. I'm sure many of you have similar computers at the moment. Here we go. Okay, so in a nutshell, when it comes down to it, do recognize that ultimately every individual med or dent school does put out their own entrance requirements. And some of them are very specific. You know, they say we want to see a semester of this, a semester of that, a full year of this. Others have taken more of a competency-based approach recently, and they might say we want to see a certain amount of credits in this area, but we're not going to specify exactly what you need to take. So keeping all those different factors in mind, we've come up with this list of UConn courses as really making you a strong applicant no matter where you apply. We do tend to play it safe rather than sorry here. And so by taking all of these courses here, you are setting yourself up to be pretty well covered no matter where. So let's look at this in kind of a logical sequencing and order. Now, as an incoming freshman or anyone new to a pre-med pre-dent track, it's most important to begin working on your Gen Chem sequence and Intro to Biology. So Intro to Bio at UConn, 1107, 1108, and then Gen Chem, you actually have two sequences to choose from. They cover the exact same content. It's just one is spread over 3 semesters and the other over 2. I would really stress the importance of beginning Chem as soon as you can because you will have to get through Gen Chem and then Orgo and then Biochem. Since they all build on each other, it's good to try to not get off track if possible. In terms of bio, so 1107 is the really important one content-wise, both for moving on to upper division coursework in MCB as well as for MCAT prep. Now, for certain majors, I'm thinking MCB, BME in particular, 1108 is not actually a requirement. We would never discourage you from taking 1108. It is intended to round out the entire year of Intro to Bio. However, because the content of 1108 is not as explicitly linked to your plan of study, some students do elect to go on and take upper division courses in MCB and count that in lieu of the lower level course. So if this is something you're thinking of, you're one of those majors, please set up an appointment to talk with us. We do like to talk with you about it individually on a case-by-case basis. Okay, now moving into Orgo. This is typically taken sophomore year. And the way Orgo at UConn works is that Orgo 1, 2443, Orgo 2, 2444 are actually 3-credit lecture-based courses. The Orgo Lab is a separate 3-credit course, 2445. And so the lab can be taken either at the same time as Orgo 2 or after. And we really see it's like 50% take them together, 50% take them separate. It just all depends on what your major area is, what other labs you have going on, etc. I will mention as well, there is a 1-credit Orgo Lab 2446 for engineering majors, and that is perfectly fine for you to take instead of 2445. Now, in terms of physics, there are several introductory sequences, and unless your major requires it earlier, a lot of pre-meds pre-dents don't actually get to physics until junior year. So the 1201 sequence is physics with algebra, 1401 physics with calc, 1501 physics for engineers. There is also a 1601 sequence for honors. Any of these are absolutely fine to take. We would typically recommend the 1401 sequence. If you are pursuing a Bachelor of Science, you have to take a year of calculus anyway. But if calculus is just not your cup of tea, then it's absolutely fine to take the 1201 sequence. Next, regarding English. So it's a very typical requirement at virtually any professional school you see. They really want a full year of English, i.e. 2 semesters. And so this is where we will talk a little bit about AP, ECE credit as well. If you have any form of that credit coming into college, we will count that as 1 semester, but we do still recommend you take at least 1 semester here on a college campus. So many of you are probably currently or in the spring plan to take your freshman English course. If that's your 2nd semester of English, then that's awesome, you'll be done. If not, you will want to look into taking 1 more course moving forward at some point before you apply. That course can be, if you want to play it really safe, anything from the English department. So it has ENGL and the catalog code. So anything that looks really exciting to you, you know you're going to enjoy, you're going to excel in. One course that a lot of pre-meds have voiced is helpful for MCAT purposes is actually 2407, The Short Story. I bring that up just because a lot of students have said it teaches you the transferable skill of digesting really long passages in a given time frame, which you do need on the CARS section of the MCAT. And in addition, it's a Content Area 1 literature gen ed if you still need that anyway. So you can kind of check multiple boxes at once. Okay. We always get the question too, so does a W course count as an English course? This is a bit of a gray area, to be honest. Every academic department at UConn has a W course. And so by English, the professional schools really are talking about a humanities course with either a strong writing or literature component. So we do recommend, if you want to play it safe, taking something actually from the English department. Just as an example, though, of a course that we have had students count successfully for English, the CAMS 1103, I believe, Classical Mythology, because that is a really strong humanities course with a giant reading component. Okay, bear with me, almost done in this chart. So biochemistry, MCB 2000 is the typical course, and that is a 4-credit lab course, typically taken 5th or 6th semester during junior year. The prereq or coreq technically is actually Orgo 2. So that's why, again, I reiterate, it's probably most important, if anything, to keep moving on that chem sequence so you get through Gen Chem, Orgo, in order to take biochem. Just to throw it out there, so we do recommend biochem, by the way, for both pre-med and pre-dent students. That's becoming a really big requirement these days. There is a 5-credit biochem course called MCB 3010, and that one, the lab portion dives into greater depth in terms of research elements, and that could be a good choice for any student wanting to pursue a combined program in the future. So for example, a professional degree along with a PhD. But by and far, MCB 2000 is the typical course taken for biochem at UConn by our pre-health students. The professor makes it very rigorous on purpose, but all the students come back to us who are currently in health professional school saying that course gave me the best prep I could have imagined for moving on to my actual studies. Now next, just to add a little depth to your upper level bio coursework, we do always recommend taking at least one of the following. So genetics, cell bio, microbio. Genetics is a typical choice, and there are 2 genetics courses at UConn. There's human genetics and then just genetics. I would mention some dental schools, from what I've seen, do like to see cell bio in particular. So that's something just to shop around, check the admissions websites of a few schools you might be interested in. Genetics is a great starting place, though, because the only prereq is that Bio 1107. So it's kind of a good bridge for moving from that intro to upper division coursework, as well as it doesn't have a lab attached to it, so it's easier to just squeeze in there sometime. Okay, lastly, now first speaking in terms of pre-med, so the MCAT was last revised in 2015, and they added a whole new section now on behavioral and social sciences. And because of that, one of the best ways to prep for that section of the MCAT is just to take intro courses in psychology, sociology, and statistics. So these are not usually explicit requirements by the schools. The schools do say they want to see, some breadth in terms of social sciences in general. But just for MCAT prep, we do recommend, if possible, you fit those into your schedule. If you don't, just be aware that you will have to brush up a bit on your own for testing purposes. Math requirements for med schools do vary a bit these days. Now, if anything, it's usually 2 semesters of calculus or 1 semester of calculus plus 1 semester of statistics. However, any pre-dent students tuning in, please note that a lot of dental schools do formally require a full year of calculus. Okay, I'm going to be quiet now for a little bit, and let me jump back to the chat box. Okay, if someone changed their major to biology, is it okay to take Orgo ASAP? Yes, absolutely. I mean, the prereq for Orgo is you have to have finished Gen Chem. So as long as you finish Gen Chem, you should be able to hop into Orgo. If you're an engineering student, so Chem 2446, that is a 1-credit organic chemistry lab specifically for engineering majors. So if that is your major, then yes, that is perfectly fine for you to take instead of 2445. I believe I answered the question about the English classes and W courses. If you need further clarification, please reach out to us, though, or set up an appointment. Any other questions about coursework, specific courses, or sequencing? If I double major in physics and would that be physiology, neurobiology, do these courses count as the minimal requirement? Oh, thank you. So I would imagine that you'd check a lot of the boxes because your gen eds for a Bachelor of Science do require you to take many of these introductory sequences. Just make sure you are adding on the required English and social science requirements, as well as you might have to add on a little bit of that MCB coursework. Anyone, feel free to type or speak up even. Going once. Are the math sequences required for PNB likely to be enough to fill the math requirements? So I'm assuming that your PNB major would require the basic Bachelor of Science calculus sequence, so 1131, 1132. Yes, that should meet the requirement for medical schools. So I think I will now just mention something about testing credit or ECE credit. So I'm guessing that a lot of you probably brought in some form of AP or prior credit to college, and there's just a couple things to keep in mind if this is the case. So we absolutely, depending on circumstances, depending on your comfort level, we never want you to be bored in a class. So this is a conversation we do usually like to have during one-on-one appointments to look into what you're bringing in and different factors. But just a couple general rules of thumb. Oh, hello, Dr. Sanford. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh, hello, Ria, as well. Give them a minute.
My even on there, I can't tell.
Thank you so much. I know you're hopping from one thing to the next today.
Yeah, I'm on my wife's machine because we can get both the audio and the visual, so we just had to figure out how to do it here.
Wonderful. Thank you for your help, Ria. Would you like to just introduce yourself and say a couple words?
Sure. Let's see. How far along are you up to coursework and stuff, huh?
Yep, we're right in the middle of coursework.
So first off, thanks for joining us. Krista always does such a wonderful job of giving you the overall overview and scope here, and quite a lot of detail that's helpful to you as you move along. So happy to contribute today and helping you appreciate all that's involved here.
Thank you. I neglected to mention earlier as well, if we were doing this session in person, we would have everyone go around, just briefly introduce yourself, also state your major area of study. And it's always really, really surprising to hear the diversity of the majors. Just again, hammering in that point, though, that you really should pursue whatever your passions are academically. Okay, so just to wrap up this coursework segment, in general, so the schools tend to be very flexible when it comes to AP biology credit. And even if you were to bring a full year of that in, so equivalent to Bio 1107, 1108, generally that's not a problem. If you had any doubts or just wanted a refresher, we would typically recommend that you accept the credit for 1108, but then retake 1107 on campus because, again, the content for that is really important for both moving on to upper division credit in biology as well as for MCAT DAT purposes. Now, when it comes to AP Chem and Physics, this is where some of the schools can get a little finicky. And so if you were bringing a full year of credit in, if you felt really comfortable in it, you just wanted to keep moving, we would recommend that to offset that, you take at least one semester of upper division credit in that academic discipline. Yale School of Medicine has a policy exactly like this. They will not outright accept a full year of AP Chem, but as long as you take one semester on a college campus, that will then, in their words, activate the other semester of credit to fulfill the requirement. So if you don't want to retake one of the intro-level courses, moving on, taking something such as physical or inorganic or descriptive just for a semester. Now, in addition, ECE credit, if you're bringing any of that in, ECE credit is a little safer at times than AP because it is technically a college course. We do recommend you bring that in if you received a B+ or above, and being aware that any ECE credit will be factored into your undergraduate GPA. And so any lower than that, and it's already like you're kind of fighting an uphill battle to try to raise your GPA a little bit. Okay. Dr. Sanford, let me please ask you, just chime in here a little bit. We did go over the typical course requirements as well as sequencing, but if you just wanted to state anything about coursework in general and or the 3 big keywords you see at the top.
Sure, happy to. So you see on the slide before you keywords breadth, depth, and rigor. Well, an admissions committee actually picks up your file to begin looking at your academic history. These are the sort of things that they're concentrating on. So, you know, when you read most of the websites for medical schools and their recommended path is they talk about liberal arts education and want to see indeed that you've sampled a number of different disciplines and you've discovered some other disciplines of interest while you were in college. You know, it's very common, for example, for a student to have start out with a major and add a minor, maybe add another major, do an interdisciplinary kind of major, individualized major in sort of our language at the school. It just shows a certain amount of initiative, creativity in how you think about the goals of your undergraduate experience. Second area is depth. They don't necessarily react positively to a circumstance where everybody just takes the intro level course and everything. So sure, you have a lot of breadth, but really not excited about anything to the point where you really explored additional coursework, at the 2,000, 3,000, even graduate level. So it's important to show that you have engaged in some disciplines by taking some additional follow-up courses. And it just, for most people, just happens naturally as they get exposed to different courses. Often it's the charisma of the faculty in providing, course preparation for you. Just following up on some other goals that require, further depth of subject in different areas. Third area is rigor. You will have an opportunity to, explore, some rigorous upper division classes, and even in the basic prerequisites, there are, some divisions there you can think about whether you want to do physics as algebra-based or calculus-based, biochemistry. You want to do a 4-credit, or would you like to try the 5-credit? So there are different choices along the way for you to consider. But, it's really these 3 kind of overall catchwords that end up being important as they're looking at your entire kind of academic schedule and what you selected to do and how well you did. A little later, we'll get into a 4th that's also on this list is essentially independent scholarship, but we'll approach that later.
Thank you so much for highlighting those again from an admission standpoint. Just to round out the section on coursework, so just to put it on your radar, there are some special courses you might consider taking in the future. And the top 3 are actually taught by Dr. Sanford typically. Patient and the Healer is offered every semester, and that is a rare 2-credit course at UConn. It does meet for about 2 hours once per week in the evenings. It gives you experience learning how to take a patient's medical history as well as conducting an examination. And the other 2 typical courses, Intro to Physical Examination, Health of Communities, tend to be spring courses. All 3 of them do require a permission number. For Patient and Healer, we actually have a form on our website now under the same one of the appointment request forms. And because seats are limited, oftentimes you might not be able to get into these courses until you're a bit of an upperclassman. However, just something to think about if you are interested for the future. In addition, it's good to note that there is actually an EMT course offered on campus if that was something you were thinking of doing and getting certified in any way. That is a partnership the Allied Health Sciences Department has with Hartford Hospital. So the catalog code is AH4092 EMT training, and it is a 4-credit class, so it is a very big time commitment, but at least for that time you do get 4 academic credits. And the main contact person is Dr. Susan Gregoire. If anyone's interested in that, you can find her name on the Allied Health Sciences website or just email us at Premed and we can share it. Again, Dr. Susan Gregoire. Finally, just good to know, be aware that our office actually does offer an MCAT review course on campus every spring semester. Unfortunately, not in the fall, but in the spring. That is typically spread over 11 weeks and meets for about 4 hours every Saturday morning. Each week is focused on different content and how it's actually utilized, applied on the MCAT. So it does expect that you've already had the content. It is not teaching you the content for the first time, but rather looking at applications and the typical kinds of questions you actually see reflected on the exam. Just the benefit of that is it is a fraction of the cost of some of the private testing companies out there. So some students use that in tandem with other resources and companies that they find. Okay, before diving into that next element of holistic admissions, I do want to check and make sure if anyone has any more coursework related questions, please type them into the chat box and or unmute your mic and speak up. I'll give you a minute. Is there a DAT review course as well? Unfortunately, no. We used to have one. For various reasons, it was discontinued, so I apologize.
A quick question about the MCAT review course.
Yes, please.
So will there be like an email sent out to students that are interested in taking the MCAT review course, or how will we know where to find this specific course for the spring semester?
Sure, thank you. So we do begin advertising the course later in the year, typically after Thanksgiving. So first and foremost, just be checking our newsletter. It will be in there definitely. And then also there will be a link right on the Pre-Med Dent Center's office's webpage as well. It is prorated, so I believe there's like 3 different fees, and the earlier you sign up, essentially the cheapest it is. But you can really sign up for it right before it begins. And the course always begins with an optional in-person mock testing environment, actually in the testing center on campus on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So for those of you who want to try taking as a baseline a full-length practice test, you could actually elect to do that in the simulated testing environment.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for chiming up.
Krista, I just wanted to add to the student who asked the question about the DAT. We have had some students that have tracked dental that have participated in this previously, as we had a specialized DAT section of it. But even since then, there have been some students that have found it helpful. There are certain sections that are sort of unique to the DAT that were not covered in the Saturday section. But the basic content there that you're going to have in general chemistry, general biology, biochemistry, organic chemistry, and physics is, good preparation for the exams. Of course, doesn't have perceptual ability, and all those other areas that the DAT focuses on as well. So, I would say take a look at it. If you feel it meets your needs, fine. If not, and you have other choices, certainly look at that.
Thank you. Good points. Yes, absolutely. Alumni can also take the review course. In fact, it's not even just limited to UConn students. We have students from some other local universities enroll in it as well. Okay, someone who has a full year of AP credit in chemistry, they're already enrolled in Organic Chemistry 1 this semester. So in this case, we're assuming that you're quite comfortable with the content of Gen Chem. It probably doesn't make sense to go back and retake one of those at this point. So you would want to, moving forward at some point, look into some of the 3000 level chem courses. Again, like physical chem, inorganic, descriptive, those could be some good options, just one semester. That will appease those really finicky schools. Okay, going once, going twice.
Quick question. So I'm an MCB major, but I didn't take Bio 1107. Since my major is biology based, do you think it would be okay not taking this course, or do you suggest that I take it?
1107 specifically?
Yes.
For 1107, I think we would always recommend that for many reasons. Dr. Sanford, would you like to take this one?
I didn't hear the full question, but I think it's probably, should I take 1107 and 1108? There are many schools that will accept other upper division biology instead of doing 1108. There are a couple of schools that are pretty finicky, though, about wanting you to do the first, basic bio year. So, we generally advise to think about incorporating 1108. If the question was more related to, you took 1107 earlier, should you take it again at the school? Depends how you did. If you did well, I don't think I'd repeat it. If your preparation and, grade was more modest, would it make sense to go back and do a refresher before you move forward? In a lot of cases, I might suggest that to a student. 1107 is a sort of key, rigorous, fundamental biology class. It's required for basically everything else that you take. So it's a good idea to make sure you're particularly strong in this foundation class.
Muted.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So you're always welcome to come in for a one-on-one appointment. That's usually the best to just talk over with us your individual circumstances. Okay, a couple more briefly before moving on. So outside of our MCAT review course, what are some other courses we recommend? So officially, our office does not endorse any particular testing company over the others. They all have their unique strengths and such. I will just mention some of the more common, popular ones out there. I mean, the two really established ones are Kaplan and then Princeton Review. Those ones also tend to be the priciest. Also almost everyone, by the way, makes use of the free online Khan Academy videos just for some basic content review. Exam Crackers is a company out there. That's Exam Crackers with a K. They're really good for their passage-based questions, if that's what you really want to work on. We've even had some of our own students and alumni now in medical school who have been professional tutors for a company called MCAT Self Prep, MCAT Next Step, Altius. Those are just some other names you might hear about too. Okay, I think one last question and then we're going to move on. So if you take Bio 1107 as a pass or fail course, will it still be valid? So this was the hottest question, especially in the spring when pretty much everyone had to shift to a virtual setting. The med schools ultimately, they became very, very flexible in terms of pass-fail credit. We do recommend most likely that if you're doing really well in the course, it's probably to your benefit. Keep things on a letter grade basis. And you can actually go online, though, on the Medical School Admissions Requirement Tool page. That is a subscription service, but email us, too, if you have any questions. It's essentially a database of all MD programs out there, and so you can see a comprehensive guide to what the policies are for each school regarding the pass-fail credit and online credit. I mean, at this point in the pandemic and everything, the schools have overwhelmingly voiced that, yes, they are understanding of circumstances. Okay, I think just in the interest of time, we're going to start moving on, and then, of course, we'll take some more questions as we go. So next, let's dive into the next part of holistic admissions, talking about all the experiential components. And this is where hopefully you're getting a little excited too, as you see these things on the screen. So for our purposes today, we're going to introduce kind of 3 overarching areas in terms of your clinical experiences, AKA medically related experience, your research independent scholarship, as well as your extracurricular activities. Dr. Sanford, would you like to discuss clinical experiences in general?
Sure, thank you. So most of the medical schools indeed want to see that you've sort of sampled the profession in certain ways, so you really understand and appreciate what you're getting into and the role and responsibilities of the different players, and just the whole idea of interdisciplinary medical teams that you'll be a part of. So in some ways, it's just a sort of check in to see that you've experienced the environment to the extent that you can, and that you're convinced that this is where you would find fulfillment in service to others. So in general, the schools typically want some shadowing. Our general recommendation is to try to do 3 different shadowing stints, hopefully 20, 25 hours each, to accumulate sort of a 50 to 75 hour, target. Schools often don't list a specific hour, concentration here that they're expecting, but you do have to present some evidence of just exposure, and appreciation and understanding of, again, roles and responsibilities of the profession you're hoping to enter. In terms of direct patient care, often people have a very idealized view of what they're going to be doing day to day and curing people, saving lives, and often is the real experience, the real world gives you a different glimpse of what the experience is day to day. So they do want to see that you've spent some time in dialoguing with and being able to attend to some basic needs of patients that you may encounter, just as a way of having then experienced that interaction, that communication, that caring that's required in such connections with people in this area. So this varies by school. I mean, some place a very high demand and experience demand related to this. A lot of PA programs, you have to do at least 1,000 or 2,000, even more hours sometimes of direct patient care to be a viable, candidate for their program. The medical schools don't necessarily pick a number or pin a number on this. Many schools are sort of thinking anywhere 100 to 200 hours or so is about what they consider to be, sort of an adequate exposure to have you appreciate, again, different roles and responsibilities. The whole idea here is through those various specific things listed that you see on the slide there, those are, typical choices that students exercise to give themselves a good sort of feel for the vocation and for the role that one would be playing. It's important to emphasize, here that it also just provides you an opportunity to see a lot of different health professional contributions in team approach to patient care. And you may very well discover that, your niche is a different one than medicine. And there are just so many specializations and even different technical areas that are emerging, where the health providers, the health healers on the team rely just as much on somebody with some area of expertise as they rely on, the physicians for their expertise. So it's a good chance to get some broad exposure and to really appreciate the team approach to medicine that is basically going to be what it is and will be for you. So would just highlight those areas. Today's climate, it's tough to get a lot of direct experience. Schools have backed off, really expecting a huge number of hours, most of them asking, what have you done, since you weren't able to participate to the extent that you had hoped to? What else have you sort of thought about, and how have you tried to, again, test your understanding, test your interest in the different health professions? So, this is an area a little bit in flux at the moment just because of the pandemic. A lot of students, we get, emails, we get phone calls, we get questions every day. Now, what am I going to do? I can't, do this. So just appreciate that the medical schools want to come away feeling that this is a student who is driven by altruistic impulses, to serve others. And there's a lot of other ways to serve others, that would represent, alternatives in this time where it's just pretty difficult to get a lot of direct hands-on experience. Things will, will get better, as we move into this next year. So I think you will see other opportunities emerge and other ways that one can try to get as close to this experience as we can. Just a sort of sidebar note, one of the things I do is facilitate to teach the history and physical class at the medical school. And Tuesday of this week, our group had to do their final exam, and we have to sit and score them, by computer these days. But so what happens is the student goes into a room, they're linked up with a patient instructor, and they have to take the history, of course, across on the computer. And as soon as they're finished with the history, they have to turn and then perform all the physical exam maneuvers on the mannequin in the room. It was actually quite funny because, one thing that they sort of realized is you almost needed a second person in the room to hold the mannequin, or you needed a third arm because as soon as you started to do a maneuver, the mannequin would fall on the floor. So I say that as a way of just saying, programs have gotten pretty creative about how to accomplish these sorts of experiences, and even evaluating, such experiences as close to it as you can get. So fortunately, our students were pretty savvy at this, and after a practice session, picked it up very quickly and were able to do quite well with the whole thing. But I think you'll see various things emerge that represent possibilities. I would say, be a little careful about all the virtual stuff that you probably have started seeing already. Just sort of check it out, be a good shopper, go to reputable sources, to sort of get whatever you can virtually. And, there will be opportunities that will sort of reemerge. And I know Krista knows of many of these, and I see probably will want to talk about health leaders and others. So I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much for that very insightful discussion and funny anecdote. That's I can't get over the mannequin thing. Yes, and creativity, creative solutions, this seems to be one of the big keywords right now. In fact, the Dean of Admissions at UConn Med just a couple of weeks ago was talking about this exact thing. I mean, at the moment, they're more concerned that you are able to come up with some creative solution to be doing something during this time. Rather than fixating on the fact you might not be able to get shadowing hours at this moment. And there's so many things you can be doing that aren't related to medicine directly, but that you can always tie back to the core competency areas. So even if it's something where you're strengthening your communication skills, I mean, you can very directly tie that back to, experience for the future when you have to interact and communicate with patients. So just give it a little thought, and, as a freshman especially, this is really your year to explore and try some different things out, so you don't have to necessarily commit right away. Another thing is to, at the moment, just shift your focus a little more from clinical to service, because there are still many ways you can get involved with service from a very virtual setting. Just one small example, we had many students this past summer become certified in being crisis line responders. So that took them about 30 hours to get trained, and it's something you can be doing right from your bedroom, and you're still making that human connection. You're still making an impact, but you don't have to physically be anywhere. So there is a very long list, actually, of some ideas by pre-health advisors across the country in the link at the bottom of this page. So please check that out. These slides and the recording will be up on our website shortly. But go through this because it might spark some ideas in the meantime. Also, just to highlight one program in specific, the UConn Health Leaders Program is a fairly new program. It's a little over a year old now, and this is based at the Health Center in Farmington, Connecticut. So they do screening of patients there, and one of their goals is to really focus on the social determinants of health. And so this is a great program because it really combines elements of clinical things, service, as well as direct professional development, some networking with physicians there. You get to learn about specialties, as well as you complete a series of modules throughout your time that are directly taken from the UConn Med curriculum, learning about specific populations of people and working with underserved populations as well. So the next application deadline for this is November 25th. You can read about their requirements and really preferred qualifications on their website. They do prefer sophomore and above standing, but just check it out because this is something that a lot of students have found very meaningful in getting all these kinds of experiences, as well as they have been able to adapt to the current environment and still offer some form of programming. Okay, at this point, let's shift focus now to research independent scholarship. So actually, I would like to point out the resources on the slide. So maybe Dr. Sanford, could you give a little introduction to just research in the context of professional school, as well as if I'm a student, what kind of research should I be doing?
Gotcha. Research is often not identified as a specific requirement to go ahead to apply for professional schools. I would say it's always viewed as a positive, and would just reference back to the sort of key words we gave before, breadth, depth, and rigor in independent scholarship. Investment in some research activity certainly demonstrates initiative, demonstrates a curiosity about science, demonstrates that you can identify materials necessary to try to answer a research question, to be highly critical and careful about the process you undergo, and then to be highly critical of in analyzing any results and essentially next steps in the research process. So as an experience, it's always viewed as a positive. Students that are thinking about moving ahead to both graduate program activity as well as medical school activity and MD, PhD programs, we typically encourage to get on this right away, even as freshmen, or certainly as you come back in the early sophomore year. You certainly want to utilize your summers to show a sort of really burning interest and desire in really your own fulfillment through engagement in research and new discovery. So, it is important. I would say most medical applicants do try to engage in research in some ways. Often it doesn't have to be chemistry or physics or bio bench project. a lot of students like to do some more clinical application experiences where they're maybe looking at the efficacy of different treatment modalities. They're looking at sort of new or alternative sort of treatment plans by different medications or other approaches that are taken. Even social science projects are things that you may be very interested in, that you want to explore areas like mentioned before related to social determinants of health. If you're English major, if you're a history major, you may be engaged in more literary text, research. So it's more the experience than the actual field that the schools are interested in. And I think what that says to them is that you're a curious person, you're interested in the discovery and application of new knowledge. Willing to sort of commit the level of effort required. Those of you in thesis programs are going to do that as a matter of what you've chosen to do as your undergraduate experience. So, typical student, say, in the honors program is committing maybe 3 contiguous semesters of work, to completion of their kind of capstone project there. Alternatively, we see a lot of students do some fellowships, summer fellowships at different companies, at different schools, in different hospital settings. Most often, the choice of doing that is sort of after the second year or after the third year in school. A lot of faculty sort of want to see that you've performed really well in basic foundational classes in the sciences before they'll sort of entertain you coming into their labs. But it's Connecticut is a strong research university, and there's a huge number of opportunities. So we encourage students to sort of look into areas of interest, look into exploring different faculty. And I know Krista has a whole line of different resources there that she'll point you to explore this.
Great, thanks. So I'm going to share my screen again. Once more, ignore my massive number of tabs. Okay, because when we, it would help if I pulled it up for UConn. Okay, so one of our sister units, as I mentioned in the discussion about enrichment programs, is the Office of Undergraduate Research, or we call them OUR. This month, October, just conveniently happens to be their month of discovery. And so I draw your attention to a couple events happening. First of all, the Research Connections event, because of the virtual nature of this semester, they've converted it into a 6-panel schedule happening next week. And so please check out some of these health-related ones, because you can hear from current undergrads and professionals, faculty, all about how they got into research and what they're doing, that kind of thing. Another event coming up is the Frontiers in Undergraduate Research poster exhibition. And this is really the major event this office puts on. It's a chance for any undergrad involved in research to explore their interests and then present the community of other students, faculty, even just community members. And so just by dialoguing with some students here, you might be able to get a really good sense of things you are interested in, and or jot down the names of their faculty advisors. Because if you keep saying the same name who are doing kinds of projects you're interested in, that could be a good sign then. Go check out that faculty's lab website, check out their CV, read their publications, and maybe reach out to them to set up a time to dialogue. In general, OUR offers info sessions every semester, also conveniently called Getting Started in Undergraduate Research. So if this is something in the back of your mind, something you want to get into sooner rather than later, please check one of those out. You can even see a couple of their handouts at the bottom here. Really comprehensive Getting Started guide on their website. as well as everything right down to sample email templates that you can send to faculty you might be interested in reaching out to. So please check it out. This office is also amazing because they have plenty of funding opportunities. So just to highlight a couple of those, a lot of pre-med, pre-dent students make use of these SURF grants, which would pay you up to $4,000 to be doing research at any of the UConn campuses over the summer, as well as the Health Research Program. So this is a really cool program. It's a few years old now and is a partnership with the Health Center, again in Farmington, where as an undergrad, you're actually placed in a faculty's lab there. So it's like a full-time commitment. Most of the positions do begin in the summer. They hope that you continue it in some form, reduced capacity throughout the academic year as well. And the application deadline is typically early February. Oh, so they already have it up February 1st, 2021 for next summer. So please go on here. It looks like they took down their past positions, but you will see eventually all the positions are very different. Each lab has a different focus as well. Okay, so that was one thing. In terms of the events, you can also find the past brochures from Frontiers by going to one of these tabs. Again, it's just a really great way to maybe find the names of some faculty mentors you might be interested in reaching out to. I find it's a little more exciting than just blindly clicking through names on a department website. Okay, I think I'm going to pause here now and ask what questions you all have related to the clinical experiences and research before we head into the home stretch. So please type them up and or unmute your mic. And thank you for bearing with us. I know we're almost there.
Question about the clinical experiences.
Yes.
So who do we talk to in order for us to either shadow for someone in order to, and also to have the patient care experience? Like, who do we talk to in order to like look into internships or like, yeah, basically the info about that?
So for shadowing, it's usually easiest to try to go through any prior connections you might have. If you do have family or friend connections in healthcare, reach out, say, would you be willing to let me shadow you if they're a physician? You could also, as a starting place, try your own pediatrician or primary caregiver because at least you have an established connection. Again, just caveat, because right now shadowing is probably the #1 hardest thing to obtain, but kind of an intermediate solution. Maybe you could reach out and ask for an informational interview at the moment, and that way interview a physician or dentist just about how they got into this field, you know, what they like and don't like about a day in their life and that kind of thing. In terms of direct patient care experience, it really depends where your interests are. So some students go the very formal route and they elect to obtain a license. So for example, EMT or certified nursing assistant. So that's a pretty big time commitment. Other forms of training include becoming a medical assistant or some kind of a tech. Medical scribing is actually a really, really popular activity these days, especially after you graduate, where you're trained in how to take a patient's medical history. But you can also obtain this direct patient care experience through a form of volunteer work, which I'm going to get into in just 1 minute.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks for that question. So for medical scribes specifically, there's kind of 2 overarching organizations that arrange a lot of these. One is Scribe America, the other is ProScribe. That would be a really great starting place. They're typically paid positions, so that's why they're popular like after graduation when you want to build up the hours but also earn a living. Virtual shadowing programs, it's still a bit of a gray area at this point. From the schools I have heard, they're willing to accept them, but we would always say you would want to do that as a complement eventually to some in-person experiences as well. And as Dr. Sanford mentioned, just be careful, do your shopping. I would probably steer clear of anything that's telling you they want to charge you money for doing it. You know, just do your research. Maybe one more question? Time is flying.
Yeah, the only other thing I'd mention, Krista, in the group, you know, all the clubs on campus that are health-related clubs usually have some subcommittee or some arm that's kind of charged with seeing what's available. and helping students in whatever way they can make some connections. So whether that's, Pre-Med Society or, Pre-Dent, or whether it's PA program, the kidney screening group, MedLife, other things, these school clubs and groups really do a great job with programming and connect you with a lot of professionals who will often, give you their leads and emails and names for contacts. If they can't do it themselves, often they'll make kind of connections with maybe other colleagues to see if they can do things. So it's one of these areas you just have to kind of keep at it a little bit and be a bit persistent with it. It can be pretty frustrating. A lot of folks sending out emails and they don't get any responses to any of this. So it's where you can, just find a way to make as personal a connection as you can. And as I say, through some of the groups that Krista's listed here, there's often an arm, a subunit that is really trying to identify opportunities like that.
So that is a perfect segue then into talking about just extracurriculars in general. Student org is a great starting place. For the exact reasons he just listed, they're also a great forum to eventually gain some leadership type roles down the road. So for some of the major health-related orgs, these are some of the big ones you'd see at stores. And at last count, there are over 40 health-related orgs that I found. So the three big overarching ones are listed at the top there. MAPS, number 4, they're extremely active. They just hosted a fantastic panel on Tuesday night with 3 alum who are now at UConn Med, who all very kindly reiterated that, research whatever you're really, really interested in. So that was awesome. UConn Rescue, for example, for current or aspiring EMTs, Global Brigades, MedLife, they do a lot of international service trips, often with a clinical component. If you have an interest in global health, there is a global health symposium organizing committee on campus even. So definitely check out UContact and use the filters to find some you might be interested in reaching out to or joining. Just as an example too, if there's nothing that appeals to your current interests, you can always start your own club. That's exactly what 4 sophomores did about 3 years ago. In this picture at the top here, they founded a new club called Knit for NICU, where they combine their love for knitting with so they knit like little beanies and blankets for premature babies, and they have partnerships with about 3 hospitals in the local area to drop them off. So really exciting stuff. Extracurriculars in general, this is also a great way to get some of your service done. Because regardless, the medical and dental schools do want to see you have a very strong service orientation. Again, altruism, that you're going into this field for really the right reasons. Dr. Abbott emphasizes the service constantly as well in regards to being a pre-dental student. And so UConn Community Outreach, if you go on their website, you can find they have one-time opportunities, they have semester-long programs, including a whole chunk of programs that are healthcare related if you wanted to overlap that with some direct patient care experience. So just examples being they have a partnership with the local Wyndham Hospital, the next town over from where UConn Stores is located, as well as the Collegiate Health Service Corps, working with some underserved communities in the areas, particularly may or may not be immigrants, non-native English speakers, and so on, do a lot of public health outreach and educational initiatives. And if something like just working with kids is more up your alley, then certainly they have a lot of programs, after school tutoring, big buddies type mentoring things. Community outreach also provides transportation to all of their experiences. So especially if you don't have enough credits to have a car on campus, you just hop in their van and you get shuttled back and forth. Okay, I do apologize. I don't know where the time just went, so I'm going to keep hopping. And if you are at one of the regional campuses, these are just a good starting place as well for some of the groups that I'm aware of that have a lot of pre-health students. I did just recently connect actually with the biology club at Stanford and give a little presentation with them. Okay, the last big element we want to talk about related to the holistic admissions process is called the core competencies. So please, once you have these slides, just click the links and read up on them. But essentially, the Association of American Medical Colleges has their own list of these 15 different areas which they find are the skills, personal attributes, types of knowledge that really successful health professional school students and professionals embody. They're loosely categorized into these 4 big areas. So these are the 15 areas just listed off. Again, on the website, you can actually read full descriptions as well as examples of students and how they demonstrate them. But just to highlight some of the big ones, so you'll see right at the top there is the service orientation. Cultural competence, really stressed, right? You have to display the sensitivity to working with patients of all different backgrounds. So what in your own background and experiences demonstrates you're comfortable doing that. Teamwork, huge one. So as was alluded to earlier, as a physician or dentist, you're part of a larger healthcare team. You each have your essential role to play. And so, what are you doing that demonstrates you're a good team player? That could be something as straightforward as you're part of the club soccer group, or maybe you're part of a research lab where you do work collaboratively with other undergrads, grad students, and postdocs. So really find ways to be creative and think about these. Because even just that summer part-time retail job you do, maybe that's a really great way that you demonstrate your reliability and dependability, consistently show up on time, also your customer service skills, connect to oral communication, and so on. We've been talking a lot about, in light of the pandemic, how to display resilience, adaptability. Again, these are all things that you want to constantly just come back to, reflect on throughout your time as a pre-health professional student. We will ask you as well what you feel your biggest strengths are when it's time for that composite letter I introduced. Okay, and lastly, so here's a sample timeline, and this is very, very general because, again, recognize that it's actually becoming really more the norm than anything to take a little extra time after you graduate before applying to medical or dental school these days. So this timeline is under the so-called traditional timeline, though, of if you did want to begin school right after you graduated, just be aware that means you're actually applying for it the summer after your junior year. That's also typically the time when you would be taking either the MCAT or the DAT, so that varies a little bit too. So freshmen, any freshmen tuning in today, really important, use this year to really focus on academics. As Dr. Sanford says, be a little bit of a nerd. And then just explore some things outside of the classroom, see what gets you really excited, interested. Ultimately, it will be quality over quantity from the admissions perspective. And so it's much more meaningful if maybe moving into sophomore year, you're able to identify even just a couple things that you want to stay committed to on a really regular basis, ideally over an extended time, because that'll just open up more depth in the experience as well as potential leadership roles. So your summers are generally a good time to begin working on those experiential components if you haven't been able to get to them over the academic year as well. Again, if you are on the timeline of wanting to apply to begin school after you graduate, then you would attend our annual application orientation workshop in early February. February of your junior year. That is kind of your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about that process, and then getting the composite letter, and then take it from there. If you are taking a little extra time, or if you're an alumni even tuning in, then absolutely you just reach back out to us whenever you're ready, and we work with you exactly as if you were a current student. And with that, 2 more slides. So first of all, the Explore Health Professions Week is coming up in November. Please check our newsletter for links about that. Great time to explore some different healthcare careers. I also encourage you, when you have these slides, check out the links for the AAMC and ADEA. They have their own versions of official timelines. And, if you just want a sense of where you should be, again, there's no right or wrong way to do this. People are at different times, but just as a guide to guide you moving forward. Finally, at UConn, a couple good resources to know about would include the Q Center. And I see it looks like we have Q Center Hartford tuning in today. Thank you so much. So for basic tutoring and some of your intro STEM courses, as well as the W Center. Hello. So the W Center is awesome. They also do personal statement review. So when it's time to apply, please reach out to them. The CCD is great. Today, you might have noticed they're hosting actually a graduate and law school fair, which Dr. Sanford was on a panel a little bit earlier. They do everything from walk-in resume critiques, mock interviews, as well as personal statement review, which a lot of students don't actually know about. And finally, the Academic Achievement Center. So this is a great place if you find yourself ever just having a really rough semester or having some challenges settling in. They can help you with everything from test-taking strategies to time management, and also just having a good mentor and peer guide to help you along the way. So thank you again so much. This recording and the slides will be up on our website. I do want to be respectful of your time, but Dr. Sanford, would you like to give just a very brief closing remark?
Sure. I just wanted to just pay attention to the slide just before this one again, and that there's a lot of opportunities in research and in clinical activities these days. So exploring health career options really important. Another couple of resources to look at. There's an advisor's sort of website that gives a nice review of all the different health provider roles and educational programs connected with it, the sort of positives and negatives of such a vocation. So again, just keep in mind that healthcare is really more of a team game these days, and there are a lot of players, and it's good to just explore some of the different options there. And in the end, you're all there to provide the best care for the patients that are in your charge, and each of you has developed some unique specialization, and you really all have to work together to give the best care, whether that's in as a PA, whether that's in physical therapy, occupational therapy, nursing, pharmacy, really technical roles in terms of neuromonitoring and other technical areas that, really the other professionals rely on you for the expertise to be able to do what they have to do in surgeries and handling patients. So, it's often good to have a sort of, a second choice, some backup choices, and, it's just a good idea to explore the variety of things that are out there. So, special thanks for attending today, and continue to want to stay in touch and help you in any way we can. Thanks.
Thank you. Please make an appointment if you'd like to discuss individual questions. Take care. Bye.